Okay. What we were doing?
Brain. I mean,
Brain is not over. Mile. What? How much?
Whole humanity.
Wow, good. Maru क्या है तुमको?
72.
कितना error क्यों? 8 marks error क्यों? Where you lost mark? Very good. And what about boys? तुम लोगों को भी तो मिला होगा पेपर. हाँ.
One mark out. I got 78.
It's not confirmed. Yeah.
77 मिला.
78.
What about that side?
75.
Good. 17. Bit careful, huh? Because where you are losing marks, you have to make a. हाँ? इसके लिए? तन्मय. Marks बोलने में why should you be ashamed? You should have that finals अभी हुआ नहीं है ना, बोर्ड अभी तक हुआ नहीं, ये मार्क्स बाद में कौन पूछेगा, किसको याद रहेगा? But this mark should make you, अब जिसको 75 मिल रहा है and above, now see, once you go up, don't come down. And जो लोग अभी भी 2-3 step पीछे हो, you should try to go much higher. बस उतना ही simple thought है और कुछ नहीं. But the thing is that you have to understand, you must have seen your own papers. देखा है paper? हाँ. तो वो paper जब if you have seen, then you know where you have lost marks. Aishwarya? 72. 4. Work hard little bit. See, you can easily do it. There may be some few topics which you are finding it little bit difficult. So for revision, you have to do little bit more of revision. What about this side?
67.
67. All not point, no? 32. Acha, good. This one? 43 out of 50. Okay, okay. So now, next exam is in
5th December.
5th December. So see that you are revising every topic. Now from this exam, you are more or less aware in which of the chapters you have lost marks. So work hard on those chapters. Revise karo, revise karo, revise karo. Which topic we did last? Dekho. Nervous system. हाँ. Nervous system. I think brain will got over, then only steps and we are done. This chapter. Autonomic nervous system only the difference. Structure of the brain already we have done, no? Function. Parts of the brain we are already done. Spinal cord we are done. Yeah. Huh? Achha, we'll complete with this chapter today. Look into page 137. Look into page 137. No talking. Look into page 137. E sub number 2. E sub number 2. E sub number 2. E sub number 2. फटाफट करो. That particular question, the parts of the brain we are already done. Structure, function of brain already done. Complete that part. No talking. Done? Okay, chalo. Now look into that question, all of you. Look into that question there. Look into that question. Whose book is this? You may take. You have to solve. Just the questions. Once you finish this, you give me the questions in my book is a bit different. If you have a doubt with any of the questions, fatapat complete. If you have a doubt, no talking. Nobody will talk. Nobody will talk. I asked you that question to complete parts, functions of the brain.
The memory
Arachnoid. Neurometer. Arachnoid.
Yeah, spider-like structure, right?
Arachnoid. Over. Any doubt in that question, anybody? Read out the questions. Are you getting the answers? Third is doubtful. Number C. Third part, Pons Veroli. This is a 4 is medulla oblongata. कहाँ पे? Pons Veroli है ना ये? This is Pons Veroli. No, the upper lobe is always Pons Veroli. The upper lobe they are showing in your diagram. The upper lobe is Pons Veroli. Veroli. Mila, we are done. We have completed, no? This. So we had studied structure, parts, functions of the brain. हाँ, क्या है? What is it? Doubt. What is it? Read the question. Huh? Labeling. Which diagram? This one. This. Number 1 is cerebrum. Number 1 is cerebrum. Number 2 is cerebellum. Number 3 is pons varoli. Number 4, medulla. Got all of you now? Parts. Other questions all done from that part? Could you answer those questions? Tanmay, Durvesh, could you answer the last line? Did you get the answers? Now, if you are done, let us try to summarize this part. What are we talking about? Nervous system. If we have to subdivide nervous system, the last class we had studied already this part. Nervous system we had already studied that it is made up of two basic divisions. One is what? Central nervous system. The other is peripheral. Peripheral little bit we are yet to discuss. Central nervous system the other we already completed. Where we have been talking about the structure of the brain and the spinal cord. Brain, some of you were absent the other day. Brain, when we look into the structure of the brain, what are the three prominent parts? Forebrain, midbrain, hindbrain. Out of these three parts also, as per your syllabus, you are only to study the portions of the forebrain and the hindbrain. About the midbrain, nothing much is there. So what are the parts of the forebrain? What are the parts of the forebrain? Very fast. What are the parts of the forebrain we studied? Cerebrum. And what are the parts of the forebrain? No, I had written down very clearly. How come you all are confused? And hypothalamus and thalamus, and these two forms another part. What is that part known as? Diencephalon. Please remember exactly what I had written down also on the board. Now the forebrain is made up of the cerebrum and the diencephalon. And diencephalon forms or has parts like thalamus, hypothalamus. Functions for the cerebrum are many to understand. What are some of the categories if I now speak? What are the functions of the cerebrum we studied? Voluntary functions, sensory functions, behavioral functions. Do you remember? 3 types of functions, no? And what about the functions of the thalamus? One function of the thalamus, you will get a difference in the paper. Hypothalamus and thalamus based on the function to write. Thalamus, what was the? That is hypothalamus, regulates body temperature. What about thalamus? Relays pain and pressure impulses to cerebrum. Meaning carries pain and pressure impulses from the receptor to the cerebrum. Did we study this the other day? Hypothalamus regulating body temperature. Remember the other day we were discussing vasodilation, vasoconstriction, etc., etc. So that was about the brain. Do you still remember about the meninges, 3 meninges? Do you still remember about the cerebral cortex? Cerebral cortex say the cytone and the axon, how are they? So what is the outer layer of cytone known as? Gray and inner is white. Okay, so these concepts are very basic. You should remember. Spinal cord. If you are to write down some differences between the spinal cord, what are some major differences? I just go through one between brain and spinal cord. So if I talk about the section of the spinal cord, this is what I showed you the other day. And what can be some 2-3 differences between the brain and spinal cord? Arrangement of the gray matter is?
Outer is gray, inner is white, and the upper.
No, in the spinal cord,
outer is white and
inner is gray. See the diagram. This diagram you should remember. If it is the brain, the gray matter is outward. And if it is the spinal cord, gray matter is inside. This is the gray matter. What is the meaning of the word gray matter? Accumulation of cytone. And the white matter is outward. Accumulation of axon. But for the brain, the axons are inwards. White matter is inward. Okay, so that's a major difference always. Meninges remains exactly the same. Then, apart from that, again, if I have to summarize, what are the functions of the spinal cord? What did we learn? If I regulates voluntary functions in association with the brain. Regulates a large number of involuntary functions also in association with the brain. The spinal cord I'm talking about. Something like, if I have to talk about peristalsis, that's an involuntary function. Yes or no? Peristalsis, beating of the heart, the breathing rate, these are all involuntary functions. Now, these are the involuntary functions. Yes, spinal cord is helping in. The spinal cord is regulating, but in association with the brain now. But if I talk about reflexes, something like blinking due to an irritant, that is a reflex. That is not a simple involuntary activity. Now, at that time, the spinal cord alone performs such type of a function. So I already gave you to remember that 3 types of functions for the spinal cord to remember. I said if I have to talk about voluntary functions, yes, in association with the brain. If I have to talk about some major involuntary or the regular involuntary functions in association with the brain. But if I have to talk about what is the major function of the spinal cord there, the spinal cord alone can control reflexes. This actually not in association with the brain. Come this side. We talk about peripheral nervous system. What is the definition? What are you supposed to understand? Peripheral nervous system is what? It is a network of neurons. A whole lot of nerves. Scattered all over the body. But all these nerves, either they are entering or leaving the brain or entering and leaving the spinal cord. So first of all, I'm talking about the brain and the spinal cord as the major regions of the nervous system. But the brain and the spinal cord are constantly receiving messages and giving commands away. So for receiving messages, there should be some sort of some set of neurons. For giving commands away, there should be some set of neurons. So this network of neurons which are away from the brain and spinal cord, that is what we are talking about as peripheral nervous system. So the basic definition is it is a network of neurons. It is a whole network of neurons, a network of nerves, a whole network, accumulative network of neurons or nerves all throughout the body in association with the central nervous system. Actually, every particular neuron will be either entering the brain or spinal cord or coming away from the brain or spinal cord. Peripheral nervous system, again, we can divide into 2 more subdivisions. What are the 2 more subdivisions? We talk about somatic nervous system. This somatic nervous system that I'm talking about, again, are majorly associated with all the different type of voluntary actions of the different type of body parts. Voluntary actions, majorly we to understand somatic organs, functions of the somatic organs, the voluntary function. And here we talk about 2 major sets of nerves. The somatic nervous system is majorly made up of 2 major sets of nerves. Which are the 2 major sets of nerves? We may talk about cranial nerves. Here we talk about cranial nerves, which are 12 pairs of them. And then we talk about spinal nerves. And these spinal nerves, there are 31 pairs of them. So now by the term cranial nerves, when I say these are the nerves which are in association directly with the brain, carrying functions inside or carrying information inside and commands away from the brain. So these are those nerves directly in association with the brain, and these are those nerves in direct association with the spinal cord, carrying messages in and giving commands away. So how many, this is very important for you, you get questions on this. How many pairs of cranial nerves? 12. How many pairs of spinal nerves? 31. 31 pairs of spinal nerves. The other side, this is one I already told you. Now we talk about autonomic nervous system. Now that I talk about autonomic nervous system, what is autonomic nervous system actually regulating? I said that this somatic nervous system is what a set of neurons, but it is just a set of nerves. A part of this, it is a set of nerves regulating such and such functions. There is another set of nerves. Now that I talk about the autonomic nervous system, it would be regulating a whole lot of involuntary functions of the body. It would be regulating a whole lot of emotional conditions of the body and many more. So now that I talk about the autonomic functions, what is autonomic functions to understand? What is the autonomic nervous system doing? all these neurons are either engaged in controlling a variety of involuntary functions as per the need of the body, or controlling variety of different type of emotional conditions of the body, etc. Now, this autonomic nervous system, we can still categorize further as sympathetic. We can still categorize them further as sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system. This is a major difference to understand. Sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. Just a very simple concept, try to understand. Sympathetic nervous system is again another set of neurons, meaning these neurons can again be bifurcated based on what function they show. The neurons that form the autonomic nervous system can again be bifurcated, divided based on what function they show. There are some set of neurons which are associated with violent actions of the body. Associated with violent actions of the body or the stressed conditions of the body. And there are certain set of neurons associated with the stable conditions of the body or the calming conditions of the body. I'll tell you what does this mean. Now, say suppose I talk about sympathetic neurons. Sympathetic neurons, I said, these are associated with the stressed conditions of the body, violent conditions of the body, meaning what? These are those type of neurons which are responsible for increasing the breathing rate. Say suppose now we are tensed about something, we are excited about something, or there is something that is scaring us or giving us some type of a stress. So any type of a condition away from normal, whenever our body, are we able to understand that today something is happening away from normality as the breathing rate is going high? Because of any type of a condition, maybe your results are going to be declared. Now today, in just 15 minutes, your board results are going to be declared. So what will happen? Aishwarya, what will happen? There will be a little bit of a tension and a stress will build up, no? So what will be some of the changes that will happen in your body at the time? There will be no appetite. Now that you are writing the paper, now say suppose you are already writing the board paper and then time is almost running out, 3 questions yet to be answered. You are sweating, you are perspiring, breathing, and the nervous has been built up. So all these things that we are talking about, either associated with stress or nervousness, anxiety or fear, all these functions bring about some common things happening in our body. Number one, sweating, perspiration, one, loss of appetite, lack of appetite. Then quite a number of so release of the tears. No, release of tears is also one. So all these things and the increase of the breathing rate and the blood pressure, all these things are as it is there. So all these functions are actually regulated by the sympathetic neurons, sympathetic nervous system. But again, I say that even if in just 15 minutes time you realize that 2 more questions yet to be answered, that tension will last only for a few minutes and after that you are going to give up. Cannot do anything, just let it be. Even at the worst of the conditions also, we may cry only for 10-15 minutes. Do we keep crying for 10, full 1 hour or 2 hours? Why? Because this set of neurons, which are antagonistic, this set of neurons will immediately start stabilizing the body and prevents the body from getting collapsed. Because at the worst of the conditions of our life also, we may cry at a stretch only for 10-15 minutes, not more than that. Because if we do it for a longer time, the body will run out of salt and water and we may start collapsing. At the most excitatory conditions of our body also, we may be excited, the breathing rate will be higher only for a short period of time, but by that time, the parasympathetic neurons will start stabilizing our body, otherwise we start collapsing. So these 2 set of neurons, nervous system, are always known as antagonistic. One brings about the violent conditions of the body and the other calms back, stabilizes back. Okay, so there is a table of conditions of in our body that happens quite a number of times. So just go through once, quite a number of times you are asked in your paper to take which is a function of the sympathetic and which is a function of the parasympathetic. Now, since already you are done with endocrine glands, with this reference, let me also tell you that the moment you had already come across the word emergency hormone. Yes or no? What was that emergency hormone? Adrenaline. And there also we have come across that whenever we are too tense or excited, etc., etc., there is adrenaline rush, and then the adrenaline starts releasing, and then this brings about the increase in the breathing rate and the pulse rate and no heartbeat and etc. No, so that release of the hormone is also associated, or the release of the hormone is also based on these functions of the nervous system. So these set of neurons are actually regulating all those functions. So here try to understand the basic difference. These are always associated with violent functions and these are associated with calming or stabilizing functions. Bolo. They are antagonistic. Now they are antagonistic, same like the insulin glucagon. Okay, same like what is the epinephrine or epinephrine that you have studied. So all these. Next is reflexes. Now let's a little bit try to differentiate reflexes. So reflexes, I already told you what is the definition to understand. What is the definition of the word reflex or reflex action? When we talk about reflex, that is, it is a spontaneous, some key terms that we should always write in your definition. It is a spontaneous, it is rapid, it is involuntary, and it is sudden. And at the same time, it is a nerve-mediated activity. It is a nerve-mediated activity. And this nerve-mediated activity is controlled by the spinal cord. It is controlled by spinal cord. So now that we are talking about what is a reflex, what is reflex action, the basic definition when you write, see that you try to include all these terms. Reflex action is always rapid. Reflex action is always spontaneous. Reflex action is always very, very unplanned. It is actually, whenever we are talking about reflex action, it is basically protective in nature and it is controlled by the spinal cord. But now, whenever we are talking about the word reflexes, reflexes also can be categorized. What can be the category of reflexes? I may understand that these reflexes that we try understanding, there may be two different category of reflexes. One type of reflexes from the mass natural. Natural reflexes, also known as inborn reflexes. And what's the other category? We talk about artificial reflexes and also known as acquired reflexes. Let us just learn few examples. Before that, when we have to understand examples, before that, let us try to understand the pathway. What is the pathway of a reflex? And what are the components of a reflex? For a reflex action to be completed, what are some of the components? The components, 5 components are very much necessary. What are the components? The first component would be what? A receptor. The first component would be a receptor. Give me an example of a receptor. Scale. Then we talk about the sensory neurons, which should take messages from the receptor to the CNS, mainly the spinal cord now. And then the second is the CNS. But here, majorly for majority of the reflexes, spinal cord is the major component here. Next is what is the fourth component we are talking about? The motor neuron. What is the job of the motor neuron? Carry commands or messages from CNS to target glands, effectors. So now the fifth component is effector. So now that we are talking about all these 5 components, basically, when we are talking about spinal cord or CNS, majorly we are understanding spinal cord here. So here what are we understanding? If it is a normal involuntary activity like peristalsis, what should be the root? The root should be sensory, the receptor. From the receptor, the message has been carried by sensory. The sensory is carrying messages to the spinal cord, and then the messages go to the brain first. Then from the brain, the messages again come back. And then comes by the way of the motor, the effector. So what is being, which part of the nervous system is being neglected here, or which part of the nervous system is not been fully informed, and the thinking process of the brain is not being waited for. But if I'm talking about now that you are talking about any type of involuntary activity, now say suppose breathing, even for the process of breathing, rest, all the components are involved, and the spinal cord is giving commands to the brain and waiting for the command waiting for the messages from the brain to come, and then the rest of the body works. But if it is a reflex, the messages to the brain are not given, because quite a number of times that's taken for the brain to think and give command that may result in some damages to the body parts. So part of the nervous system that is not informed is the brain. So the brain is not involved here. This entire set of components which results, or which are the components of the reflex action, results in the fastest method of nerve impulse conduction. The brain is not involved again.
Will you explain why brain is not involved?
Brain is not involved because the brain takes a short period of time in thinking or processing the information. For example, if I talk about the process of breathing, if I talk about the process of peristalsis, the food is running down. Constantly, the messages are being going to the spinal cord. The spinal cord sends the message to the brain. The brain comes and gives the commands back to the esophageal muscle, and the process of contraction and relaxation is going on as per the need. But there's a time taken, just less than a second, of course. There are some shorter period of time taken for the thinking process of the brain to process information and give the commands. But say suppose you are walking or you are running and suddenly you get to see a big hole. At that time, the reflexes that works is so very fast. At that time, the receptors that your eyes have seen that hole, the messages immediately go by the way of your sensory neuron to the spinal cord. The spinal cord does not send the messages to the brain, because by the time the messages goes to the brain and comes back, you must be already stepping forward. So now the spinal cord immediately gives the commands back to your effector, the leg muscles, that contract and move back. So that is what actually happens whenever we are talking about a reflex. Most of the time it is a protective function. So it is said that if in most of the cases the brain is involved, it would have been possible that the parts of the body would have been damaged. You would have ended up in some damages. Now, if I say this, then this shortest route of nerve impulse conduction, where I talk about this is there, followed by this, and then this, and then this, so the brain is not there. And this is what is known as the reflex arc. So what is reflex arc? The shortest route of nerve impulse conduction. The shortest pathway of nerve impulse conduction. Why do we consider this is the shortest pathway? Again, I repeat, since the brain is not involved in this process. Now, let us talk about some examples of natural and acquired reflexes. From the term itself, you understand that here there is no previous learning. And artificial and acquired, the term is acquired. That means there must be a little bit of a practice involved here, no? So let me talk about one example here. Natural reflex, sneezing. Somebody teaches us how to sneeze? No. Sneezing and coughing. Now these are natural reflexes, which is almost the same for all individuals of a species. For all individuals of a species, this particular feature that we exhibit, this particular feature that we show, this will be exactly the same. Can you give me one more example? Inborn reflex. Blinking of the eyelids. Okay. Now, blinking of the eyelids, I said, sneezing, I said, coughing, I said, salivation also quite a number of times, depending on conditions. All this becomes inborn. But if I talk about swimming, this is a reflex. Is swimming a reflex? Yes. Yes. Swimming is a reflex. Yes. What is he saying? I didn't get it. Swimming is that oh my God. You had a marvelous start. We were never this. Swimming. We just move a little bit of our body. There is little bit of a body. Is over in school? Huh? No. अभी हुआ नहीं क्या? I thought your teacher must have shown so interesting video that he's. Now give me one example for acquired reflexes. Now, the set of examples that we come across here would be majorly all sorts of different type of involuntary activities which have almost been considered as reflexes because of regular practice. Say suppose the first time you had learned how to cycle, cycling, was it a spontaneous activity or it was a difficult activity? It was difficult. Then you have been doing this, and now it has become so smooth. Say suppose how you eat your food with a spoon. Remember at the age of 3 years, was it so very easy? हाँ, वो spoon लाते सब खाना गिर जाता था, and spoon अंदर जाता था तो भी खाने से खाना. So now exactly when we talk about all these, try understanding all these features, wearing the shirt, wearing your shoes, all these things with regular practice, now it has become so spontaneous for you. Yes, that is what we are categorizing here. Acquired reflexes, natural and acquired reflex. Now give me one example, natural and acquired reflex. Give me one example, natural, एक example दे दो. One example of natural reflex that you have understood. Apart from what we discussed right now. एक और example of natural reflex, एक और example of acquired reflex.
जब भी कोई ठंडा बॉडी हमारे स्किन को टच करता है,
Shivering.
hot body.
हाँ, shivering you can say, that is called shivering. So shivering is also a natural reflex. And artificial, एक और example बताओ artificial reflex. Writing, writing, reading, writing, all these are also artificial reflexes. Dancing. Never mind, natural reflex. I just see girls fall prey to any infection, they'll kill you. Now, you look so sophisticated. Your look is very sophisticated, but manners are not. You're opening your mouth wide and sneezing that side. Now, we'll do some questions there. Now, last is look into the experiment, the Pavlov experiment. Pavlov's experiment, that is also a experiment. That is also an experiment to explain the conditioning, conditioned reflexes. Very fast, we'll go through that. Simple concept. Now, what are you to understand there? This is an experiment where it was conducted this way. First of all, the food is kept. Look there. The food is kept in front of the dog. The dog gets acquainted with the food. So that has to be done twice, thrice, 4 times, 5, not only once. Now the food is kept in front of the dog gets acquainted with the food. Next time what is done? The food is kept. No, next time is what? Only the bell is rung. The dog also gets acquainted with the sound of the bell. For the third condition, what has been done is the food is kept, the food is served, and the bell is rung. The food is served and the bell is rung. The food is served and the bell is rung. So now the dog gets accustomed, the dog gets conditioned that the moment the bell is ringing, the food will be there. The moment the bell is ringing, the food will be there. So initially what was happening, when the food was there, the dog was salivating. But when the bell was ringing, the dog was not salivating. The food is there, dog salivates. Bell ringing, dog does not salivate. But now when the dog was conditioned this way, that the ringing of the bell and then the food, ringing of the bell and then the food, and after a number of occasions like this, what happened? The moment the dog hears the ringing of the bell, the dog starts salivating. Either or not, the food is served. So does it happen to human? Yes, it happens to human also. Yes, this happens to human also. Can you tell me? How? Conditioning. This is called conditioned reflexes actually. Every day you do this in your school also. Conditioned reflexes. Can you give me one example of your own instances in your school?
When PT sir whistles.
When you are already acquainted with the bell of the say suppose the bell at the end of the day.
When teacher enters.
When the teacher is entering the class, good morning, ma'am. Sometimes anybody entering, good morning, ma'am. Sometimes the boss is also entering. What is that? Whether you see or not, sometimes the wash is also entering good morning, ma'am. What is happening is we get conditioned. So quite often we keep on doing something and only the situation makes us do the same behavior. That is what is condition. So now we are almost done with this part of the chapter. There is nothing more that we have to discuss. Look into some questions that I want to. Hey, what is this? What is he saying? What I told you, you look only sophisticated. Manners are horrible. Now, some of these questions you are going to do as homework. Take page 138, 136. Page 136. Number C, sub number 2. C, sub number 2. Number 3. Number 5. Number 6. Number 6. E sub number 2 already I told you. Number 6 I want you to do right now and I start with the next section of the chapter. Only number 5, number 6 I want you to do now. Fatafat karo. Fatafat karo. We have 15 minutes. I want to start with the next section of the chapter. Fast, 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 not to waste time. Only name the following you can complete now. The rest you can do at home. So best make it fast. Go through. You have a doubt, clarify. Karo. Fatafat. Go through those questions. You have a doubt, clarify. Why you all are sneezing and sneezing? What is it? No. 3 types of neurons are sensory, association, and motor. 3 types of nerves are sensory, motor, and mixed. Association is there one type, relay or association. So that is what I'm saying. Sensory neuron, association or relay neurons, and motor neurons. Nerves, sensory nerves, motor nerves, and mixed nerves. What is happening? Not to waste time, not to waste time. But this is just 5 minutes work, huh? But finish karo so that we can start the next chapter.
I'm on the next chapter.
Then circle, let's finish now. Genetics करना है या नो होता है? What do you feel? फटाफट करो जो भी है. I'm going to start the next chapter. There is time. Then Sorghum is over in school. Why this class is so noisy? Genetics is not here. In your school. You all started when? You all started your 10th standard syllabus last year. Then also, how come they're not able to finish? I wonder. So, 38, 13. Done? Done? Finish the question that I gave you? Corona fast. Meninges. Meningitis is the meningitis. Acquired reflex. क्या लिखना है? क्या लिखना है? नेम द फॉलोइंग. मैंने अच्छा हाँ. Last 1 minute I'll wait. हाँ फटाफट करो.
Yeah.
It's not coming in the last few days. I've seen one. You scared of that? Huh? Hey! What is happening? Hey now, Purvesh, come and sit here. You will not make a noise. That would not be a reason to make a noise. The classroom should be like this. It should not be noisy. You are coming here to learn. And this side of here, question, the next week is over. This side, did you do that question? Name the following. Your book is different. Your book is different. And name the following set of question I asked you to try. Just go through. You go through the questions. The rest I have given them homework. Did you solve all? Solve. Okay. Now, we start with this chapter, genetics. Not a noise. I gave you enough time to solve only one question. What are we studying here? We are studying the entire characteristic pattern of genes in chromosomes and their transfer from one generation to another. That is the entire concept that we are going to study now. Genetics. So now, first, you should understand is that I am talking about the cell, and inside the cell, the nucleus. I am talking about the cell, and inside the cell, what is it? What is it? Gregor Johann Mendel. Okay now, not a noise, absolutely not a noise now. We start talking about inside the cell, inside the nucleus, what do we have? The coiled thread-like structures. What will be these coiled thread-like structures known as chromatin? Okay. Now this coiled thread-like structures, when we understand that they undergo the process of condensation, what do we call them as? When they are condensed, we term them as chromosomes. So we start from this, that whenever we look into the concept of chromosomes, chromosomes of chromatin, is there any difference in the chemical composition? Not at all. It is only that whenever we are talking about chromatin, it is very long, thin, coiled, and whenever we are talking about chromosomes, they are condensed and they appear to be thicker, shorter. So now, if I talk about that this chromosome, which can be also drawn this particular manner, this is the chromosome that we try to understand. And in the nucleus of a cell, if we try understanding, then are we able to see these chromosomes? Yes, if a mature cell we are focusing on, we can actually see the chromosomes, we can actually count the chromosomes. Because these chromosomes which are condensed are always known to be present in pairs. So inside the nucleus, the chromosomes are always present in pairs. Inside the nucleus of any particular cell of our body, I talk about the skin cells, the liver cells, the muscle cells, the cells of the reproductive organ, any part of the body you think of, the chromosomes are always in pairs. Now, with reference to cell division at the start of the syllabus also, they also here come across. Chromosomes are always present in pairs. And how many chromosomes are we to contain in our cells? 46, that is 23 pairs, no? So from that concept, if I talk about a chromosome, then what is there internally? I want to see what is there internally. Then I am supposed to come across that this chromosome is supposed to have 2 helical strands like this, and these 2 helical strands will be connected by bonds, hydrogen bonds, you already know. And these 2 helical strands also has got some repeating units, and these repeating units are known as nucleotides. So now, if I talk about, see, suppose this is one nucleotide and this is one and connected, they are forming a pair. These nucleotides forming a pair. If this is the reference that we try to bring in, yeah, then I should say that this is what is a particular segment. This is another particular segment. I'm just drawing it random, I'm not drawing serially. This is a particular segment, this is a particular segment, this is a particular segment, and every specific segment is controlling some or the other character that they exhibit. So now what are these particular segments to be termed as? This particular segment is to be termed as a gene. What did I say just now? That this particular segment of the DNA molecule, which is responsible for a particular character, is to be considered as a gene. And what is the definition of the gene to be written? What is a gene? A functional segment of the DNA that regulates a character. A functional segment of a DNA that regulates a character. And there are many such theories which generally debate that should it be only 2 nucleotide pair or 1 nucleotide pair. So there are theories which generally say that 1 nucleotide pair, that particular segment of the DNA can be responsible for a particular character. So forget about the theories now. Basic to understand for you that a segment of the DNA can regulate a character. Now, if I talk about what is character, what is a character that I'm trying to understand? It can be a form, it can be a function, it can be a behavior of an individual, of an organism. So when I talk about what is a character, I may understand height is a character. Yes, it's a character. I may understand texture of the hair is a character, color of the skin is a character, the shape of the nose is a character, the color of the eye is a character, etc., etc. So there are so many different type of character in the human population that we can speak of. So many. Is it only in human? Is it only in animals to understand? No, even in plants. Plants also has got so many characters. You know, so I can understand the color of the plant. The shape of the leaf. It's a character. Venous system, correct? It's a character. So now, when I talk about, yes, definition first of all, a segment, functional segment of the DNA is known as a gene. Please write on the head of the chapter and write on the first definition. What is a gene? What is a gene? These are prominent definitions you should understand. You should be able to write one mark. What is a gene? Functional statement of the DNA that regulates. Functional statement of DNA that regulates a character. Functional statement of DNA that regulates a character. Now, I already told you what is a character. Character can be form, character can be function. Now, what is the meaning of the word function? Form, I already told you, basically the structure. Form, basically the structure. I may talk about the shape of the fingers. I may talk about the texture of the hair. This is form. Now, then what is function? I may talk about the amount of the enzyme released. Is it that the amount of pepsin released in each one of our body is same? No, there's a difference. Is it that the number or is it that the amount of the hemoglobin produced is the same? Is it that the amount of the pigment produced by the eye same? No, not the same. So that would be considered as function. What about the behavior? Typical behavior that we understand. That is also because of the gene that we carry. Remember what I said. What is the character? Which can be form, structure, shape. What is the function? Function can be enzyme released, hormone release, pigment release, etc. Behavior, yes, our typical behavior, whether we are tolerant or polite or rude or short-tempered, etc., etc., etc. Our likes, dislikes, all this come under this category behavior. But now, let me just choose one example of a character. Let me just take one example of a character. A very simple example. I take eye color as an example. Character. I'm talking about eye color as an example of a character. Now, is this eye color only existing in one form in the human population? No, the eye color has got various forms. I talk about skin color. Does it exist in one form in the human population? I talk about hair texture. Does it exist in one form in the human population? No. Any particular character you pick up, you'll always see that it exists in different forms in the human population. So now, if I talk about that eye color is a character, and this eye color has got different forms, and which are the forms? The normal and the prominent are brown, and then we talk about black, and then we talk about blue. So these forms that I'm talking about are the variable forms of a character. This is a character. These are the variable forms. Then which are what are these variable forms of a character known as? These are known as trait. And what is the definition of the word trait? Variable forms of a character. Variable forms of a character. So that is what we are understanding as a major difference between the word character and traits. Understood? Character and trait. So character is just a typical feature. And that particular feature can have variable forms. So the variable forms of a character is always traits. I just wind up in a minute. Now that I talk about that, if I consider, say, suppose B, I'm just writing a letter. I designate a gene by a letter. Genes are basically designated as letters or numbers, etc. Now I take a simple letter to designate a gene B, which is responsible for the character eye color, I said, no? So I'm saying that this B is responsible for the character eye color. But now that I said that eye color exists in various forms like brown, eye color exists in forms like black, eye color exists in forms like blue. So this gene also should be present in different forms. Because I'm talking about the character itself in different forms. So this chemical composition which we are considering as gene, that also should be in different forms, no? So now I say that the typical form is here, and which is regulating the brownness, one chemical composition, the gene, again, I'm talking about gene, I'm talking about a chemical composition it is. And this chemical composition is responsible for the brownness. There is another form responsible for the blackness, and there is another form responsible for the blueness. Then what are these? The variable forms of a gene, this is. Variable forms of a gene, variable different chemical compositions this is. So what are the variable compositions? What are the variable forms of a gene? This is alleles. So the basic definition is the alternate forms, variable forms of a gene. The variable forms of a gene known as alleles. And the variable forms of a character known as traits. We'll continue again from this part in the next class.
Next week, पता है